Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And Jody Lynn, we're going to be talking with somebody today who has what they call an SaaS, a software as a service, which I have an affinity for because as I think you know, I'm having my own SaaS product built right now and have been for like the last year and a half. And I can't wait for it to be done. But so that's kind of an interest of mine now that, has been on my mind for quite some time. So to actually get to talk to somebody who successfully created one and has been utilizing it, I'm looking forward to that part alone, not to mention her story, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. When you said SSAS, whatever, I blanked out completely because I have no idea what that means. So I'm just excited to learn more about all of this stuff.
Well, we use it a lot. All of us, to one degree or another, use SaaS software. We may not realize it. I mean, literally at its core, for instance, Facebook is an SaaS. If you really come down to it, any of the social media are SaaS. Software as a service means anything that you can access online with software, where the software is not necessarily installed on your computer. You're accessing something on a server somewhere. Or in the case of Facebook, 5 million servers. But the point is you're accessing it someplace online, right? Well, that's what SaaS is. And more and more people are realizing, well, gee, I got an idea for that. I'm going to apply that and see how it works out. And our guest today did that.
Yeah.
We're going to learn about that. So her name is Mary Henderson. I love saying this phrase. She's from Down Under, and she's joining us today to talk about her journey, how she got to where she is today. She's been very successful. I hope she's going to tell us that part of the story too. But then she had an epiphany, and I think that's probably going to be the root of the conversation today. So Mary, first of all, thanks for connecting from halfway around the world. That's so cool. We were talking about that before the show. And how you doing?
I'm great, Walt, and thank you for having me as well. I'm really excited to be talking to you and Jody Lynn. So I'm all hyped up and ready to go.
So, all right, tell us the story. How did all this get going? Tell us where you went, where you've been, and then where you decided to go to.
Okay, I'll try and condense it in a couple of minutes if I can. But I'll start all the way back in year 2000 when I was in the technology industry, and I had this incredible experience that literally was the door open, that sliding door moment of where I actually recognized the power of personal branding. And I also realized in that moment that, oh my God, if I can actually fix this complex problem, I can actually build an entire brand in the industry and be recognized as a complex problem solver, which is exactly what I went and did. And I did that consciously, not unconsciously. It was all very strategic and deliberate. And I then started commanding my demand, and I got job offers left, right, and center. I then got headhunted by a fairly sizable tech company out in California. I was the VP of sales for 4 years. And it was there that I started to play with this idea of personal branding. And I had a really big sales team. And we decided as a collective that we're not going to have job descriptions, but we're just going to convert everyone into personal brands. And the reason I did that is because I recognized very, very, very early in my career at that senior role that if I could get people to show up every day and be in their natural state of being, they're actually going to give 100%, not 50%, 100%. And I proved my point to be absolutely accurate. And so these people would show up at work and they would say things like, oh, I love coming to work because I can be me. I mean, how many times have you heard that in a serious corporate environment? So
never.
Never. Exactly, Jody. But you know what happened? And this is the phenomenal part. I entered that business managing the Asia Pacific region as a $4 million business. 48 months later, it was a 54 million business with triple digit margins. Like This is huge in tech. So anyway, so then I was there.
You were part of that 2000 boom is what you were.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so, but that's what I'm saying. I've seen so much change in technology and also being immersed in technology for pretty much most of my career. But then in 2005, I wanted to start my own business. That was my driver. I always wanted to do that. I started with one startup. It was fairly okay, kind of successful, had some hiccups along the way. Then I went into another startup, which was starting up my digital agency / software company. So we developed bespoke software or web-based applications for the academic sector. I found a niche, I went and closed that niche, and that's basically what my company did for 7 years.
Wow.
Now, that was a very interesting time in my life because I was not a software developer. I actually had no idea what software was at that point. I mean, of course, just going to a business that you know nothing about. But interestingly, that I still had this, I was still leveraging my brand as a complex problem solver, really got myself involved in government projects and all these associations, etc. I did fairly well. It was a 7-figure per year business. Nothing wrong with that, infrastructure, etc. Except that I didn't wake up every morning and think, I'm excited. I can't wait to go to work. This is going to be a great day. I was literally depressed. It was an uphill battle every single day. So now I have my second son, and 3 hours after he's born, I have this amazing epiphany. And because my lip balm fell out of my purse because I had dry lips, of course, 3 hours after you give birth, and my business card fell out of my purse with the lip balm. And I held this business card and I'm thinking, oh my God, my whole life has been a series of labels. This business card is defining how I fit into society, how I am seen and judged in society just because of this title. And yet I actually hate the business I've created. I know hate's a very strong word, but honestly, that was the truth. And I knew 3 hours after I gave birth to my son that I would actually resign from my own company. I was so certain of that. I knew in that moment I had to get out. So 2 weeks later, I did do that. I sat with my accountants and they were like, I think you're a little bit hormonal. And I said, oh,
No way. Did they actually say that to you, Mary?
I swear to God, Jodalyn, I swear to you. And I was like, no, like this is like for real. And this is me in this meeting with my accountants who are completely linear left brainers. And I'm like, no, this is my soul. My soul knows what it wants. And they're looking at me going, she's kind of totally lost the plot. Could you imagine using language like that with accountants? They have no idea what I'm talking about. So that was September, okay, going into October 2011. 2012, January 1st, I remember this, I'll never forget this day. It was the first day of my adult life that I didn't have a job to go to, like ever. And because I ended up merging my company with another company, I was free. And on that day, 1st of January 2012, I walked to my Mac and I Googled, how do I change my life? That's the truth.
Wow.
And it was so profound. But that 12-month period, I had the most incredible mentors. One was a professor in philosophy who I actually found that day that I Googled, how do I change my life, doing a TED talk. And I knew that he would be my mentor. I had another mentor who was an expert in the emotional body. And these two people were trying to help me understand, who am I at my core true level? Like, what am I? Like, is this it? And so I started that journey of self-discovery, inner discovery, self-actualization, all of that back in 2012. I haven't stopped. It's still going on. It's just that I'm a much more, a clear version of who I am, I guess. And I also, through that 12-month process, I also realized that this is why I'm so passionate about my SaaS product, because if it wasn't for that 12 months, I would never have developed my SaaS product. And it was this, that I already have everything I need in order to pursue my purpose. And I've been looking for my purpose outside of me, when in actual fact, all of the inventory is already inside of me. It just required for me to stop and see it. And once I saw it and I could unpack it, then I recognized in myself, oh my God, how many other people can't see this? And hence why I built my SaaS program. And then in 2015, I started my coaching program, my coaching business. It took me 3 years to develop my framework and my system, because I really passionately wanted to deliver a results-driven solution, not just another coaching business. And here I am today.
All right. Wow. You did that very well, actually. I mean, you said
Thank
you
you.
wanted to try to condense it down to 2 months. No, well, it wasn't 2 minutes, but that's okay. You did really, really well. That was good.
Thank you.
One of the things you mentioned there that kind of got my attention was how you hated what you were doing before.
Yes.
And I totally get what you're talking about. I think Jody Lynn totally gets what you're talking about. But that can sound really kind of wacko. Like, can you describe, first of all, why it was that you hated it so much after having loved it? Because you apparently loved it before. And then secondly, what made you decide you wanted to change?
Do you know what, Rob? I actually never loved it. What I loved was the validation I was looking for from my parents. That's what I was craving. I didn't love what I did. I was just looking for somebody, and it was just my parents to say, "Oh, Mary, we are so proud of you." Excuse me, even though you didn't finish your degree. That was the truth. So when I confronted that truth, I was free. So that was immediately what happened when I was on that hospital bed. I realized that that was the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And so, but the feeling of hate for me was every day was such an uphill battle. Like, it was just such a struggle. I felt that my soul was just stripped away of all of my energy, all of my all of my juice was just sucked out of me every single day. And that to me demonstrates something's wrong. Something is absolutely wrong. I can't be living my life like this every day. I just couldn't, in my head, I couldn't grasp the idea of doing what I was doing every day. Even though in my corporate life, that corporate job that I with my big team, and we build a big business, I love that. And the reason I love that is because I was in my natural state of being. Of course, I'm going to love being Mary if I can wake up every day and do things with ease and grace because they come natural to me. Now I'm in this software company, and I've got to manage software developers, completely different paradigm, as you would know, Walt.
Yeah.
And so I've had to adapt to all of these different personas, different deliverables, different intelligence, different systems, all of these layers. And I'm sitting back thinking, what the hell am I doing here? Even though I built it into a 7-figure business, go figure. But the point being is that if you're not in your natural state of being, it's really, really, really challenging.
Yes. Oh, and that totally resonates with me because my background, long before I started doing podcasts, pretty much from when I got out of school, was in IT. Not because I studied IT, I didn't, but because when computers first came out in the early 1980s, I got one and I found it was easy for me to use. And so that became the basis for my career. And by the time the turn of the millennium came, I was a server manager, server administrator, and so forth. And I was in the same kind of space you were in. I hated it. It was the best money I'd ever made, and I hated it. It was not fun.
Exactly.
And so I went off and created my own. Now, I wasn't trying to create a multi-million-dollar company like you were. I was just trying to survive. I survived. I figured that was pretty good, which was probably aiming too low, but that's another story. But the point is that I was still doing technology. I was building websites and doing them for small nonprofits and so forth. And I still hated it. I hated it less. So I was giving myself a little bit of a break that way. But ultimately, that even caught up with me, particularly because the 2008 financial crisis wiped out my business entirely because nobody gives to small nonprofits after a financial crisis.
Yes.
And the next few years was just hell trying to survive financially. So that was part of it. And then the way I was trying to climb out, well, IT, that's what I knew. So I was trying to climb out doing something I absolutely despised. And so when you're talking about how you just, I don't remember how you phrased it, but the way I heard it was I just couldn't even face dealing with it. That's the way it felt for me for years.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
dealing with that for years. And I finally, I don't know how many years it took me to finally just decide enough. I'm going to guess 15 years. if you really add it all up. And when I finally did, I was like, oh, why didn't I do that before? It's like you've been hitting yourself over the top of the head, and you stop, you say, boy, that feels so much better.
I hear you. I hear you.
So when you were telling that part of the story, yeah, that really resonated with me. I'm not sure that that's something that everybody has experienced, but there are probably a number of listeners who have experienced that in their own fields of endeavor that they've been engaged in, largely because anybody who comes out of school, the odds are overwhelming that they're not going to know what they want to do with their lives. There are a few who do know, and they have a great time, and they get in the right career. They just they thrive in whatever it is that they're doing. But the vast majority, I mean, half the people who graduate from high school, they don't even have a degree in mind. They have no idea, or they don't even know if they want to go to college. They know nothing about what they want to do. No purpose in life, which is, kudos to our school system for getting us to that point. But the fact is, that's the way it works out. And I think people deal with it in different ways. Some people learn to kind of come to terms with what they're doing. They find the good in it. They find ways to kind of weave it into their lives and accept the parts that they don't like so much and so forth. And some of us just go into the bathroom and throw up. It's just different reactions from different people.
And I think a lot of our society, like as you talk about school, I reflect on my entire life. I feel like a lot of the systems that we have in our society, gear you or guide you into this box. Like you gotta pick a box and then stay in your box. And I can't count the number of times I've been in a box and hated it, as you said. You've been like, I don't know how I get out. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is, I know I hate it. And maybe they've confronted that truth, but they don't see another possibility that even exists. Like, how can I make money or even stay in my job and have a different feeling? Like, that's not possible. Like, I can't just leave my job and do what we did. I don't have a 7-figure business to sell. And I think that it's maybe even simpler, the next step, but I'm curious about the next step. What do you do after you have this epiphany of, I hate it?
And before you panic, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, Jodie, I think that sometimes you have to have those moments where it's make or break. And for me, it was that fork in the road. It was like, do I go back and continue to self-sabotage? Because that's actually where it was leading. It was not even self-sabotage. It was leading to self-destruction. I could see that there was something that was, and also there was something driving this mind to keep going back into this self-destructive kind of environment, which I knew was wrong, and I knew that it wasn't feeling right, and also I knew it was tearing me apart. But ultimately, what it was that I wasn't myself. I recognized that. And I think that's a really important point to make, because to your point, Jodie, how many people actually go into a career of finance or accounting or law or medicine, but most people, believe it or not, do it because their parents want that want them to do it. So, and the reason I say that is, when I had my software company, all my staff were computer scientists, all top degrees. They were the top in their class. But you know what? I had 2 that had no degree, and they were my best developers. They were self-taught, and they loved it. It was like their passion. The other ones that I had, they didn't love it. They were forced to do it, all for the benefit of pleasing their parents. And that actually made me think. It made me realize how many of us are actually on a path that's never meant for us anyway. And that's exactly what I recognized. It was like when I had my mentors and I started unpacking my internal inventory, what I recognized was I can do a lot of things with my eyes closed, that they're really easy to me, okay? And the other thing is that I also recognize that I have natural gifts and natural talents in things that I've been gifted, but I'm not using in the way that I need to be using them. And would you believe that my voice has been professionally trained from the age of 5 right up until 20, So I had this talent which was called singing. Of course, my parents never allowed me to pursue that as a career. And on a side note, thank God, because I don't think I would ever want to be in that industry. But the thing is that I did not realize that I didn't lose singing. Because you can't lose the gift. The gift is the voice. So the next thing was, well, what am I going to do with this gift? Right. And other gifts as well. So when I was able to unpack all of those attributes that make up who I truly am, things that I can do with ease and grace, when I merged all of those attributes together, it was like, oh goodness, I can actually solve a problem, and I can actually bring value into the world by actually working with humans who I'm passionate about. I don't want to work with corporations. I want to empower individuals, and I want to show them how to do this systematically, because I can do that. I know how to do that. I know sales. I know personal branding. I know how to build systems. I know social media. And when I merge all of that together, wow, this is pretty exciting. And so to me, the next step is, and this is what I say to people, I wish that there was a law in every single country in the world that by the age of 40, if you haven't taken a 12-month sabbatical, you have to do it now. It's a SOS. Because in that space of silence, and when you actually feel like you're immersed in this unknown, that's where the answer is. And so I feel that that's the next step, Jodie Lynn.
That's a bold step.
Yes.
I love it.
It is a bold step, but you know what? If we don't take the boldness, then we're always on the hamster wheel. We want different results, but doing the same thing. So that the key is to get off the hamster wheel and step into the unknown, where it's really uncomfortable. You have no idea what the next thing is, but we have to actually go through this process of elimination, because what I call the mind virus gets involved. And then we just start to allow this virus in the mind to take control of our destiny. And we get caught up in that, never questioning, how come I don't love my job? Why do I not have great relationships with my children or my friends? Or, why am I unhealthy? All of these things should be questions that we need to ask.
Mm-hmm.
To what extent do you think it's important to have that kind of passion for what you do in order to be successful? And I ask that advisedly because you were successful without it. So that's why I'm wondering.
Yes, it's exactly right. I think, Walt, to be successful, we have to have success come to us. So we're actually on the wave and it's flowing for us. I feel that we do need to utilize what we have that comes easy to us. These are our gifts, our talents, our skills, our knowledge, our learned knowledge, and most importantly, our wisdom. Because what I have found in the business that I'm in now is my clients, they don't care about my systems or my frameworks or all of that stuff. It's there, they use it, they follow it. It's amazing. Really, what they want is my wisdom. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all they want. When we're on a call, they're not saying, oh, can we just look at module 5, lesson 3, framework 2.2? Like, they're not saying that. They're like, what would you do in this situation? And I, as the coach, the mentor, I should be able to answer that with ease and grace. If I should be able to go deep and wide and bring in as much as I pack so much into that conversation. To me, that's the exchange. That's the intelligence that all of us can access. And by sharing wisdom, to me, that's the intelligence that we're actually sharing, giving and taking and accessing it from also outside of this body.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that, I think that there are a lot of people that have got very successful businesses. Look at accountants. How many accountants do you know that don't love accounting? It's a business that they've built. It's something that they can do. They don't love accounting, but they're very successful. And I'm not saying here you have to be passionate about being a poet or writing lyrics or, singing Kumbaya in an ashram somewhere, in India. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're saying is that you have to at least have that ease, that grace, that when you do what you do, it has to be something that you love, I think.
Yeah, you're not fighting uphill every
Exactly.
single day. It's flow rather than force.
Yes, correct.
Mhm.
Yes.
I think there's something to be said for the joy too, because
Yeah.
the joy that's what it's the difference between external motivation and internal motivation. Joy is internal motivation.
100%.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think I have to agree with you 100% on that, Walt, because, till this day, it's 2023, I still have that butterfly, the joy in myself of my day, preparing for my coaching call tonight, and, just so much excitement. There's so much movement, because when you're present in the very thing that I believe I'm meant to be doing, then there's constant movement happening around me. There's energies flowing, ideas, creativity, all of these aspects need to come into the mix in order to be able to show up as the best version of yourself.
Agreed.
When we got started, we talked about, or we alluded anyway, to the idea that there was going to be some woo woo going on in this. So where does the woo woo come in?
I think I add a lot of woo woo in my work, and one thing that I recognize, when I first started my coaching business, especially because I've had a lot of mentoring till this day, nothing's changed. I'm very interested in lots of different aspects of the mind, the body, and the soul. And when I started my coaching business, I was very linear. It was all very much systems orientated, implementation, the SaaS, that this, and it all worked beautifully. What I realized is that when my clients implemented and they were ready to launch, something came over them. It was almost like, I can't do it. I'm frozen. What imposter syndrome? What if they find out? I can't do these. I'm not good enough. What are people going to say? I suddenly realized, why are these people like this? Like, why? What is stopping them? And then I suddenly thought, oh, wow, there's something at a much deeper, there's a condition much deeper than the brain and the body. And I need to tap into that. I know how to do that. And my mentor, who was Peter, who was an expert in the emotional body, he said, you are holding on to a lot of wisdom. And in yourself, that you've got ways of how to break that. Why don't you actually give it to your clients and help them? And I immediately said, but it's too woo-woo. What will they think of me? And he's like, well, what are you going to do with it? You're just holding on to all this knowledge and wisdom. Shouldn't you just pass it on, like a baton, and give it to them so that they can pass it on? That's how we're going to make the world a better place. And I was like, oh my God, you're so right. So then one day in my coaching calls, in my mastermind, it's group coaching online, and we were on our Zoom call, and I said, okay, I just want to kind of, just give you an idea and just get your feedback. Tell me what you guys think. What if we just made our Tuesday calls all around energetics and really just talk about self-actualizing your potential and ways of doing that? Really bring in the feminine system into the work that we do. You've already done the masculine. You're brilliant at masculine implementation, but let's become that version of you now. And that was the thing that I had to that they had to recognize. They had to embody what they just built and become that. And that was the hardest part. And I tell you, every person on that call, there were tears, and people were just like, we were waiting for this moment. We were waiting for the woo. And I'm like, let's go. And it was so amazing, Walt, because I just could see transformation happening in like real time. I can't explain it. It was just things that I would talk about, and every Tuesday I bring a new topic and I talk about it. We go deep, and I'm very visual. So I do a lot of illustrations. I want people to walk away and have that aha moment, because I truly believe that when people have that switch, when they flip that switch, there's no stopping that individual. But what I've got to do is I have to help them unpeel those layers, because when the mind becomes the driver and the soul's out here, then we need to merge those two together and understand how to bring what's our natural state, our true self to life. And the false self, the facade that we all of us have, we need to drop at many aspects of that so that we can go beyond that and shine. As I say to my clients, we need to shine bright like a diamond. It's so important. So there's a lot of woo that I bring in, but also I'm pragmatic, Walt. I don't do the whole let's sing Kumbaya and let for an hour. That's not me. I'm pragmatic. I'll back it. I'll look at science. I'll research like crazy. I'm very interested in Carl Jung's work. I bring a lot of that into my mix, and I think that it's very important to bring levels of I love validating what I'm saying, and I'm very big on that. So it's not just, and also it's a lot of what I talk about is being self-experience. It's not like I've read a book and it's like, okay, now I'm going to feed you some information. It's like, look, I've experienced this, and and maybe it might be experiential for you as well. But here is what, and I explain it. I think that woo-woo integrated in our work, even if it's in normal language, but you're actually communicating and using words, which are spells, right? Words in the right vernacular, we can move people in a massive way.
As you were saying that, I was recalling my journey doing this podcast. And when I even as recently as when I first started the podcast, the idea of talking about woo-woo on a podcast or radio show or anywhere, that was, whoa, you don't do that. No, don't go there. But the show was all about woo-woo, so I had to kind of embrace it.
No choice.
And over time, what has happened with me is I've come to the realization that, there is science. Yeah, there is woo, but they're really just two ways of saying the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
Mainstream science has its thing. It's like, oh, no, I don't do the woo-woo thing. Although more and more mainstream scientists are leaving the mainstream and becoming more woo-woo, which is a good thing. But putting that part aside, they're really talking about the same thing. They're just using different language.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Till this day. But the other thing is, I was just talking to somebody the other day and I said, we just have to we have to see the world with eyes wide open. Occult knowledge is everywhere. Okay. We just have to have your eyes wide open. So what we're talking about is not, something weird. It's the truth. Like if you really look at it and you break it down, it's extraordinary. I find who we are as humans extraordinary. I really do. I just think that there's so many layers to a human being, and we just haven't even tapped into the surface. And people just go on every day, waking up, do the rinse and repeat, get in the car, get a coffee, go to their job that they hate, 5 o'clock, log off, go back home, have something to dinner, go to bed, wake up the next morning. That's my life. Hell no, that is not my life. And so we have to question that. Like, is that normal? Is that natural? It's not.
There's another odd piece to this too. And I've been really noticing it lately, just because of things going on in my own life. The first one that you were describing, you go to work, you get your coffee, you put in your hours till 5, you come home, you hate the job, but you keep going, so on and so forth. Not everyone hates the job. There are some of them who actually like the job.
Yes, of course.
And even more than that, there is a very strong trend that has been going on for, I'm going to say 50 to 100 years, but really strong for the last 20 to 25 years. And that's a trend that Google pretty much popularized toward authority, toward the idea of who's the authority, who has the credentials, who has the links, to use the Google terminology, right? Who's got the links? Who's got the real backing? Yeah, there it is. Now I got the authority going my way. But there's a toxic side to it. There's a toxicity to the authority side. Yes. Because we've become so entrenched as a society in that certification thing that it's gotten to the point that most employers won't even consider hiring somebody who doesn't have the certification. You mentioned you had those two programmers who were your best programmers who had no certification, no training whatsoever. Absolutely. And they were the best ones. And I think that probably happens more often than people realize. But it also makes me wonder how much is, I'll call it the mainstream for a way to differentiate mainstream versus the woo-woo. How much is the mainstream undermining itself by this practically worshiping of authority, practical worshiping of certification, of expertise, degrees, all this stuff? I actually get the feeling there's a self-sabotage going on that's leading to a crash. I mean, maybe I'm kind of over dramatizing, but that's where I see it going.
I see two sides to that coin, Walt. The first one is you're absolutely right. That's the first thing, because no one cares about your 42 certifications and your 29 degrees. Honestly, they don't care. Not one person has ever asked me or my clients, can I just have a look at your degrees? No one cares. Before I engage you, would you mind just showing me a resume of all of your degrees? They actually don't do that. So here's how I see authority. To me, when I work with someone, I first thing I ask is, have you dedicated at least a minimum of 10,000 hours to your specialization? Now, I'm looking at that as just inventory, because how do you package somebody that can solve a complex problem without a background? There has to be some type of background. And that is made up of your knowledge, your skill set, your wisdom, your passions, and your experience. Okay. All of these need to be merged together. So for me, an authority is somebody that can genuinely solve a complex problem with outcomes and results. That's in a square what I would be looking for, that can command premium pricing. So, but you've got to back it now. So how do we back it? We actually don't back it with our credentials. We actually back it with our brand story, right? Because if my brand story should be able to validate why I do what I do, right? What was the origin in my story, or the origins in my story, that led me to where I am right now? That's the believability and the trustability asset that I need to get right in order for me to show up and support the very thing that I'm trying to that I'm claiming I can solve. So that's one side of it. The other side are people who think they want to become authorities, but really they want to become famous. Two different things.
Yeah.
And these are the people on social media that you and I see that have got 300,000-400,000 followers, and their whole life is around vanity metrics. And they create this ideology to the outside world that I'm really smart and intelligent, and I can solve lots of problems because look at my social media following. Now, I'm using this as an example because in the work that I do, I cannot tell you how many of those people have booked calls with me, and have 9 out of 10 have said, I've got 400,000 or 500,000 followers. One girl had 1 million, and I'm not making $1, not $1. And I want to know how I can commercialize it. Okay, let's look at your inventory. What is your background? Well, I've done a little bit of here, and I'm like, whoa. So what complex problem can you solve? You really can't solve a complex problem. You want to be famous for being famous. What you're looking for is a Hollywood agent. That's what you're really looking for. So do you see the difference here? That there's smoke and mirrors on one side of the coin, which are people that want to be famous for being famous, but they call themselves authority. They call themselves an authority on Instagram for blah, blah, blah. But they're not making any money on from all of those 400,000 or 500,000 followers. And then you have the other people who have got life experience, whether they have degrees that fit into that life experience, is not important. They may or they may not, but they have 20 years of experience in that industry, and they genuinely know how to solve a problem. So we've got to take all of that inventory and do something with it. And just to give you an example, one of my clients is a police officer, very high-ranking police officer out in Washington, and she's recently retired. And we used there's an area of specialization that she had in when she was in the police force, and we took that and converted that into an amazing coaching program where she now mentors women. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not about going from a police officer to a police officer or serving the police academy or the police force. No, she's taking this very specific and bespoke knowledge that she understands why people go in and out of prison. Like there's a pattern that she's recognized, and she also knows how to solve it. So she's pulled that out, And now we've created a coaching program around that for women, specifically women who self-sabotage, etc. So the authority piece is important, but we have to make sure that we communicate what the meaning actually is. Is it being famous, or is it genuinely being able to solve a complex problem and make our world a better place?
Yeah. And as you're describing that, I'm realizing there's also another category, which is the one that I fall into. Because, like I said, I've been doing this podcast for a little over 10 years now, and I have considered various ways to monetize it. I've considered doing coaching. I explicitly rejected coaching because I just didn't really want to be a coach. It was not something I wanted to do. And I've looked at other things. I've considered the idea, well, maybe I build it up to the point where I can sell advertising. I've actually looked at, and I'm currently theoretically involved in a program where advertising can be brought in. I had 4 or 5 different advertising offers brought to me in the last couple of days, and I rejected them all. And I rejected them in part because the way they want to do advertising with podcasting these days, they want to do what they call pre-roll, which is before the podcast starts. They want to put ads in there, and then they want to do mid-roll, which is in the middle of the podcast, interrupted like a commercial, and put in a message there. And the way it usually is done is fairly disruptive to the program. It's just like, oh, the podcast stopped, and all of a sudden you're hearing this other message, which I really dislike intensely. And that was the reason I rejected all of them, because they all wanted to do a mid-roll. I was willing to consider them. They're products and services. Okay, I can see having those at the beginning of the show, but not interrupting the middle of the conversation. And this kind of ties into a bigger piece for me, which is I don't want to spoil this, because I've got so much non-monetary value out of doing this podcast just for myself, not even mentioning what it's done for my listeners, my co-hosts, my guests. I mean, so many people have gotten so much value out of this. The last thing I want to do is spoil it by commercializing it. And yet, certainly, I would love to be earning a living doing this. Not that I don't have other income sources, I do, but I would love to be able to do that. How do you go about resolving that problem? Because that's one I've never been able to solve. How do you, without selling yourself out, commercialize what you're doing in a way that works for you?
And I think this is where it requires what I would call the unpacking process. It really does. It's not something that you can answer in 1 minute. I think it requires because when I'm working with people and I'm looking at and we do an onboarding call, I really dive deep. And for me, to get the best outcome in terms of creating a solution, communication and asking the right questions is the best way to do it. Because for me, it's all about, and this is my genius, Sonus, the ability to extract, keep extracting until I get all of the moving parts. Then I can see patterns. And sometimes, Walt, the commercialization or the solution has nothing to do with what you're doing. That's what's so incredible. That sometimes the outcome is, have you actually thought of X? Like, for example, one of my clients, she thought she wanted to be a coach, but actually she's far from that. She's actually a speaker. That's really her pathway. She should be just a speaker based on her background, what she does, etc. She's be really big in the sporting arena. And so it requires to go granular, really deep, get all of that inventory, even on an Excel spreadsheet or on a whiteboard, and just look at it and not have an expectation of an outcome in 5 minutes. It really is a creative process. Honestly, it really is a creative process. And it's like seeing yourself as an artist, and you've got a blank canvas, and it's the blank canvas that you're trying to make sense of. And you've got an idea of the picture, but the end result doesn't even look like what you started. And I think that mindset of seeing this as you being the artist and not having an expectation of what the outcome is, it will be much better to just allow for whatever comes out to come out and then make sense of it, rather than going in from beginning to end. It's like, get it all out, and then once it's all out, then bring it back together. That's my approach anyway.
It makes total sense to me. It really does.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I mean, that's not all that different from what I have done so far. I haven't done it with a coach or a mentor like you, but it's part of the reason I ended up at the point where I said, I don't really care if I don't monetize it. I love what I get out of it in other ways. And, if somebody comes along and says, well, why don't you try looking at this way, and this way actually works? Yeah, okay, I'll pay attention. But
Mhm.
until then, I'm okay with it just being the way it is until something better comes along. So, like, to borrow Louis' phrase, if not something better, if not this, something better. I'm open to something better, but for the moment, I like this. This is good.
Mhm. Yeah.
Jody, when you were transitioning, I mean, you've been through a few different business models yourself, right? And
Yeah.
you are also a coach. But when you were transitioning through your process there, did this come up as a topic for you? Like the passion piece, first of all, but also the joy piece.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that right now, everything that you're saying, Mary, is resonating like deep within my soul. So for me, I was in a traditional financial brokerage. I still am. I still have that brokerage, but it was every day was a grind, and my awakening was realizing that I didn't actually love that. I was being one, like moved by the validation of my family, seeing me do great things. But also, it was a very they were big into celebrating and validating. That was like one of their main things at the company. So I was always like in this hustle mode, trying to be the best. And I realized I was killing myself in the process. And that I had gotten many, opportunities to shift that, but kept going back to this same hustle and grind of things that I didn't like. And so I had to take a big step back and sort of a sabbatical and just say, I can't go to the events anymore. I have my own office. I'm not doing training anymore. I'm just going to see what I actually like to do and not. And I really put all of these walls around myself because I was afraid, because I didn't fit into their box anymore. And, over the last year, that was a couple of years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago, I went on to this, this discovery of abundance, and abundance within me started to channel abundance codes and started to go in the direction of coaching. And so I've had this divergence of 2 different streams going on at once in my life, and was, loving, passionate about the coaching side of things, and then started to realize that I had lied to myself a little bit on the brokerage side of things, that there were still things that I liked. Like I liked sitting down and building a plan and showing people how they can get to their goals. And that just fills me up, the strategy side of things. All the other stuff, meh, I can leave that. But the seeing the bigger picture and explaining complex financial things in a way that people understand is one of my gifts. So I like doing that on that side. But I realized that all of the things that I did within that structured, very masculine business that I was trying to get away from, I started to introduce right back into my coaching business of, I got to listen to this person and I got to put myself in this box. And, last year I redesigned my entire program and made it all so it was self-study, because it was just too much for me to do, live launching and then, teach it. And then every time I do a new course, I'd be like, did I say this last time? Which was like, Lord, I see this time. Like, I'm so confused, and I'm a channel, so I'm receiving information live. And one of my gifts is to dig deep with people. So then we'd get on a roller coaster of a tangent over here, and I'd be like, oh man, we didn't do anything we were supposed to. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. But as Mary, as you're talking, I'm like, wow, I put myself into this box, because every coach that I've had to coach me on like the marketing and the branding and stuff for the abundance consciousness, as the other business is called, is they all wanted me to just talk about money. Because I understand it. I understand the complex financial structures. Great, amazing. They wanted me to talk about money and just love attraction when it comes to money. And what I'm realizing now, and why this conversation is hitting me so hard, is that over the last couple of months, it's this big realization that it's not just money.
Yes.
Abundance is more than a number. And that was one of the first things that I had declared. And I understand that. And I wanted to teach more of that, abundance in all areas of your life. But I just put myself back into that box and started hating doing that too. Like, I like the lives and stuff, but there's a lot of lost passion there. And it's been so frustrating trying to navigate that. So yes, I've definitely felt that, Walt. And I'm learning so much today.
And Jodie Lynn, can I just add to that? The problem with a lot of, the digital marketing mindset, if you will, is very much geared towards stick with money because that's a niche. And then you can just follow that square. But you see, that's very dangerous. That marketing ideology around, find a niche and speak to that niche is very dangerous. It's so much better to say, this is the problem that I can solve, right? And there is no niche. The niche is invisible. It's like anyone that needs this problem solved, I can help you. It's a much more fluid way of also communicating and using much, much wider, bigger language. It's a lot more creative. So it's not money issues that you only solve. It's opening yourself up to abundance and prosperity. There's so much more to, as I said before, to a human being than just money. So much more to us.
The ideal problem, what hit me hard, I even wrote it down, was, your backup or your authority is coming from the story that led you here. Well, the story was I was dying inside and hated my life and kept thinking money will fix this. And no matter how much more money I made, it was never fixing it. It was that realization. So I got myself out of that and was still making money, even though they told me I wouldn't, right? Went on this beautiful path. And that's abundance to me, is that path of seeing that you're not in a box and that money can come easily, and abundance in general. And it's just so interesting because I tried to put myself back into the box.
But we're good at that, right? I mean, once you have a skill, you keep using it, and you had the skill of putting yourself in the box. So I'm very good at hustling myself to death. Is essentially the way that it works. Jeffrey put the question very adroitly in the live stream. He says, "When does the hustle take over the passion?"
Yeah. Well, maybe it comes down to how you've been programmed, and whether you're actually taking what Mary is saying and actually heeding that advice of your, you like taking all of the, like an allocation or a itemized list of all of the things that you're brilliant at. And instead of, it has to look like this, allowing the picture to form itself and an idea to come through. Like, as you were saying, this person was supposed to be a speaker. I was like, maybe that's the direction that I was supposed to be going, instead of like, I'm a coach, because I hate the word coach. But it's just opening up to seeing a picture that wasn't a part of that box that you first created.
Exactly.
Coach is a box.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a box. That's why I don't, that's another very good point, Walt, because even the word coach is so limiting, because everyone's a coach now. Like, everyone's a coach. So when I'm working with my clients, and because they've got the backup of all of those hours, they've got the inventory to back them up, and they are solving serious complex problems, they're transformational leaders. They're not coaches. And this is a language that we need to start using, because it's a rise above everybody else. If you're a transformational leader, you genuinely have a solution to a complex problem, and you know how to solve it, you know how to deliver results, and you know how to deliver outcomes. If you've got all of those ticks, you're not just a coach. It's too limiting.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. Yeah, because words, first of all, we know that words matter. The way that we think about things is influenced by words, and the words that we use influence the way we think. But more than that, it also, I think this is what you're alluding to, it also limits the way we think. It limits our opportunities because we've limited ourselves to that. Oh, there's the box again.
The box again, exactly.
It just keeps coming back, that damn box.
I hope it's made of cardboard, because I'm going to burn it.
Exactly. Don't, and this is the thing, like, boxes are not made for some people like us, because we're just like, get me out of here. And it's just like a prison to me. I couldn't cope. And this is why I think that when you're unpacking, your area of specialization or all of your attributes, the isn't the goal. And really, I think everyone would try and aim for this goal. Not everyone, but those that are dissatisfied with their current situation, is to find what freedom actually means to you. I think it's a very important question to ask ourselves. What does it mean to me? Does it mean having my own business? Does it mean having money available to me? Does it mean having a relationship? Does it mean all of those things? I don't know. But we really need to ask that fundamental question. What does the freedom actually mean to me?
And not just once either.
Agreed.
Exactly.
I mean, that's got to be an ongoing question, really.
Exactly. Because we change as humans, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you ask it once, okay, this is it for the rest of my life. This is the final answer.
Well, and also our answer to this question, what does freedom mean to me, comes from the perspective of the box we're sitting in. So if we think money, having a 7-figure business means freedom. Well, Mary would disagree with you because she knows that that's not absolutely true.
It's not. 100% not. And I think that freedom's not it's not about, I think we also associate freedom with things, material things, outcomes, results. But when we start to see freedom as freeing our soul from a condition that it has been established, not by us, by the outside world, but we're still holding on to that condition that's driving us. When we can actually understand those aspects of us and we start unfolding and becoming consciously aware of how our life is playing out in the real world, that to me is freedom. Because when I can understand that breadth and depth of knowledge, and I can get to a place that benefits my reality, my 3D reality, I'm going to be a much better person. I'm gonna flow with life. I'm not going to feel like my whole life is one step forward, 10 steps back.
Yeah.
As usual, Jody Lynn, the time runs out a lot faster than we want it to, right?
Yes.
This is fun. This is really interesting talking about this.
Well, this is why I show up every week. I just love these conversations.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. But nevertheless, we are running close to the hour. So there's a couple things we need to do. First of all, since you don't do coaching, since you do transitional leadership, we got to find out, how do we find Mary Henderson if we're interested in building our ability to become transitional leaders?
Yes. Well, first of all, if anyone wants to book I offer a 45-minute free coaching call. So if anyone wants to talk to me about anything, feel free to book a call with me, which is maryhendersoncoaching.com/apply. Or you can just go to my website, maryhendersoncoaching.com, or any of my social media, Mary Henderson Coaching.
And there's also that SaaS that we alluded to earlier. We never really talked about it in great detail.
No,
but
we didn't.
Give us like an idea of what goes on with that.
I developed my software as a service program, or software as a service program, for specifically and exclusively for my clients' world. And that was based on that 12-month period that I had with my mentor, who was a professor in philosophy. And he made me go through this process of elimination, which was so extraordinary. But through that process, that's when I recognized, oh my God, what if I could help people unpack all of their attributes in reports? That's going to give me real data. I'm going to look at those reports, because you can't lie in those reports. It's the truth. So when I can look at all different aspects of a human being, now I've got a picture of what they look like, as close to the truest version of themselves, not the false version of themselves. Because when we're creating a brand around a human being, we do have to show up as our authentic self. And to do that, we've got to drop the facade and go to the true self, which most people haven't recognized exists. So if I can tap into that, I can't tell you how many people get so incredibly emotional when they go through that process. because it's almost like that they're seeing themselves for the first time. But that's what I want to work with, because if I have the authenticity of a human being, then I can do a lot with that. It means that they can stand out in the world and be unapologetically themselves. And that's the truth of who they are. No competition with anyone. Don't have to aspire to be like anyone else. This is who I am. It's very powerful.
So it's actually a key foundational piece to your coaching
Very.
program that is not really a coaching program.
No, it's not. It's a very, very key part of it's the beginning starts with that. And I can't do anything without that. It's extraordinary. You know, it really, really goes very deep and granular, but it builds a really solid foundation. That's the truth. And that's what I believe is very important for the people that I work with, is to bring out that element of truth so that when they show up, they are absolutely who they're meant to be.
Well, that sounds really good. I think anybody who has already latched onto an interest, they'll know to reach out, and we'll make sure we'll include a link in the show notes to make it easy for them to find it. And Jody Lynn knows what's coming next, because I always wind up the show with this, because you, like so many people coming onto the show, are a giver. You have become a giver. That's become part of your brand, so to speak. And givers don't get enough credit, in my view. Because there are many people you'll never meet, you'll never see, who you've touched in some way. You've talked on a podcast, maybe they did see your site, maybe they even tried your SaaS. Maybe they saw something that you read somewhere, or that you wrote somewhere. Maybe they interacted in ways you never even knew you were interacting with them, but they picked up on what you were saying. They took something away from it and they used it, and it made their lives better. And we never hear about it. Well, not never. Sometimes we do. Sometimes they become clients, but often we don't hear about it. So I like to say on their behalf, thank you for what you've been doing and what you're continuing to do. And thank you for the fact that you want to continue to do it.
Thank you, Wald. Thank you, Jody Lynn. It was such a pleasure to meet you guys. You guys are absolutely awesome.
So are you.
Look, Jody, look at that smile on your face. You always smile, but that's a big smile for you. That's like, I am just joyful right now.
We're all aligned. See, the stars are aligned.
100%.
I love seeing Jody Lynn like that, because you can practically see the glow coming out of her forehead.
Oh my God.
So, Mary, thank you once again for joining us. Thank you for sharing all this wonderful stuff.
So much.
Really, really
Thank
cool.
you so much.
Yeah, very, very good. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.